What happens when two of country music's biggest stars clash on live television in a way that nobody saw coming? The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and by the end, one of them was walking off the set while cameras were still. Rolling, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story gets more intense with every minute that passed. It started like any other taping of the Kelly Clarkson Show. The studio was buzzing with its usual energy. Audience members chatting excitedly as they waited for the cameras to roll. Kelly was in her element, that warm smile lighting up her face as she prepared to welcome her guest. Miranda Lambert was scheduled to appear to promote her latest album and tour dates, what should have been a straightforward, friendly interview between two powerhouse vocalists who had always maintained a professional relationship in the industry. The first few minutes went exactly as planned. Kelly's opening was flawless, her enthusiasm genuine as she introduced Miranda to thunderous applause. Please welcome the incredibly talented Miranda Lambert. The audience erupted as Miranda walked out, looking every bit the country superstar in her signature style, waving to fans with that confident smile that had won over millions. "Miranda, thank you so much for being here," Kelly said as they settled into their chairs. "I have to tell you, I've been listening to your new album on repeat. The storytelling is just incredible." Miranda's response was gracious, her voice carrying that familiar rasp that fans loved. "Thank you, Kelly. That means the world coming from you. I've always admired your ability to connect with people through music." The conversation flowed naturally at first. They discussed Miranda's songwriting process, her inspiration for the new album, and her upcoming tour. Kelly asked about specific tracks, and Miranda opened up about the personal experiences that shaped her latest work. The audience was engaged, laughing at the right moments, nodding along as Miranda shared stories about life on the road and the challenges of balancing her career with her personal life. "You know, I think what I love most about your music is how honest it is," Kelly said, leaning forward slightly. "You never shy away from telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." "I think that's what country music is all about," Miranda replied. "If you're not being real with people, what's the point? Fans can tell when you're putting on an act." Kelly nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And speaking of being real, I have to ask you about something that's been making headlines lately." Her tone shifted slightly, still friendly, but with an edge of journalistic curiosity that hadn't been there moments before. Miranda's posture straightened almost imperceptibly. "Okay, shoot. There's been some talk about your comments regarding younger artists in the genre. Some people interpreted your words as criticism of artists who they feel are more pop than country. I'm curious about your take on that." The question hung in the air for just a beat too long. Miranda's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. "I think there might be some misunderstanding about what I said. I've always supported all artists, regardless of what genre they choose to explore." Kelly's expression remained neutral, professional, right? "But in your interview with Country Weekly, you did say that some artists today seem more interested in chasing trends than honoring the roots of country music. Were you referring to anyone specific?" "I was speaking generally about the industry as a whole," Miranda said, her voice steady but with a slight tension creeping in. "Music evolves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think it's important to remember where we come from." "Of course, and I completely understand that perspective. But some people wondered if you were referring to artists like myself, who started in one genre and explored others." Kelly's question was direct, but delivered with that same warm tone she used throughout the show. Miranda's jaw tightened slightly. "Kelly, I wasn't thinking about you specifically when I made those comments. I respect your journey and your success. I appreciate that. I really do. But you have to understand how it sounded to some people. When you talk about artists chasing trends rather than staying true to country music, and then you see headlines about pop crossover artists, people start connecting dots." "I can't control how people interpret my words," Miranda said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "I said what I said, and I meant it in a general sense about the industry." Kelly leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "I get that, I really do. But don't you think as artists with platforms, we have a responsibility to be mindful of how our words might affect other artists, especially those who are trying to find their own path in music?" Miranda's eyes flashed. "Are you suggesting I should censor myself to protect other people's feelings?" "Not at all. I'm suggesting that maybe we could lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." I wasn't tearing anyone down, Kelly. I was expressing my opinion about the direction of country music. Since when is that controversial? The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Audience members shifted in their seats, sensing that this conversation was heading somewhere neither host nor guest had initially planned. Kelly maintained her composure, but there was a steeliness in her voice that her regular viewers rarely heard. It becomes controversial when it sounds like you're questioning the authenticity of other artists' work. Miranda, you're incredibly talented and successful, and your opinion carries weight. When you imply that certain approaches to music are less valid than others, it can be damaging. Miranda sat back in her chair, her arms crossing slightly. So now, I'm damaging people by having opinions about music. This is exactly what's wrong with the industry today. Everyone's so worried about offending someone that nobody can speak their truth anymore. There's a difference between speaking your truth and dismissing other people's artistic choices, Kelly replied, her voice remaining calm but firm. And honestly, Miranda, this attitude of yours is exactly why some artists feel like they can't take risks or explore different sounds without being judged. The air in the studio grew even thicker. Miranda's publicist, sitting in the front row, looked visibly uncomfortable, glancing between her client and the host with growing concern. Miranda's voice grew sharper, her southern accent becoming more pronounced as her frustration mounted. "Kelly, what exactly are you trying to say here? That I don't have the right to express my views about the music I love? Of course you have." "That right," Kelly responded, her own voice gaining intensity. "But with that right comes responsibility. You can't just throw stones and then act surprised when people call you out on it." "Throw stones!" Miranda's eyebrows shot up. "Is that what do you think I'm doing? I've been in this business for over 2 decades. Kelly, I've earned the right to have opinions about what's happening to country music." Kelly's composure was starting to crack, just slightly. "And I've been in the music business for over 20 years myself, Miranda. I didn't just wake up yesterday and decide to sing country songs. I've put in the work, I've paid my dues, and I've been honest about my journey from day one." Nobody's questioning your work ethic, Kelly. Aren't you, though? Because when you talk about artists who are more interested in chasing trends than honoring country music's roots, and when you specifically mention crossover artists in interviews, it sure sounds like you're questioning something. Miranda leaned forward in her chair, her voice dropping to a more intense tone. "You know what, Kelly? Maybe if the shoe fits, you should wear it. I never mentioned your name, but if you're feeling defensive about your choices, maybe that says something." The audience gasped audibly. Kelly's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, the studio fell completely silent except for the hum of the cameras. They were capturing every second of this unexpected confrontation. Kelly took a deep breath, visibly collecting herself. "Wow. Okay, so now we're being direct." "That's fine, Miranda. Let's be direct. You've made it pretty clear in multiple interviews that you don't think highly of artists who cross genres. You've talked about authenticity and staying true to country music, like you're the gatekeeper of what that means. Maybe someone needs to be Miranda shot back. Maybe someone needs to stand up for what country music actually is instead of letting it get diluted into something unrecognizable." "Dilute?" Kelly's voice rose slightly. "Miranda, music has always evolved. Johnny Cash covered 9-inch nails. Dolly Parton has done everything from bluegrass to dance music. Were they diluting country music too? That's completely different, and you know it. How is it different? Because they did it first. Because they had your seal of approval." Kelly was fully engaged now, her media training warring with her genuine frustration. "Or is it different because they weren't threatening your position in the industry?" Miranda's face flushed, threatening my position. "Are you serious right now, Kelly? I've sold millions of albums. I've won Grammys. I've headlined stadiums. My position is just fine, thank you." Then why do you care so much about what other artists are doing? If you're so secure in your success, why does it bother you that some of us explore different sounds? "Because I care about the integrity of country music." Miranda's voice was rising now, her hands gesturing emphatically. "I care about preserving something that means everything to me and millions of fans who don't want to see it turned into generic pop music with a banjo thrown in for good measure." Kelly stared at her for a long moment. Generic pop music. Is that really what you think my country work is, Miranda? I think your country work is ... calculated. I think it's designed to appeal to the broadest possible audience instead of coming from a genuine place of loving country music. The words hung in the air like a slap. Kelly's face went through several expressions: shock, hurt, and finally, anger. The audience was completely silent now, some covering their mouths in disbelief at what they were witnessing. Calculated, Kelly repeated slowly. My country music is calculated. Miranda, do you have any idea how offensive that is? Do you think I don't genuinely connect with those songs? Do you think when I sing about heartbreak and resilience and small-town life, I'm just putting on an act for market share? I think you're a talented performer, Kelly. I've never said otherwise. But you just said my country music doesn't come from a genuine place. You just implied that I'm faking it for commercial success. That's not just questioning my artistic choices, Miranda. That's questioning who I am as a person. Miranda seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. Look, Kelly, I'm not trying to attack you personally, but the reality is, when you jump from genre to genre, people are going to question your commitment. To each one, that's just the way it is. Jump from genre to genre. Kelly's voice was incredulous. Miranda, I started in pop, moved into country because I genuinely fell in love with it, and I've been consistent in both. I'm not jumping around like some opportunistic chameleon. I'm exploring music that speaks to my soul. If it speaks to your soul, then why do you need to keep one foot in pop music? Why not fully commit to country if that's where your heart is? Kelly stared at her, and when she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. Because, Miranda, unlike some people, I don't believe you have to put music in rigid little boxes to validate it. I don't think you have to choose just one way to express yourself artistically. And I certainly don't think I need your permission or approval to make the music that feels right to me. I never said you needed my permission, didn't you? Because that's exactly what this conversation feels like. It feels like you appointed yourself the country music police, and now you're telling me and every other artist who dares to color outside the lines that we're not authentic enough for your standards. Miranda's face was getting redder by the minute. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm trying to preserve something important, something that's being lost in all this commercial crossover nonsense. Commercial crossover nonsense, Kelly repeated. You mean like when you collaborated with pop producers on your own albums? Or when you covered rock songs? Or when you appeared on pop radio countdowns? That kind of commercial crossover nonsense. Miranda's mouth opened and closed for a moment. That's different. Those were artistic choices that enhanced my country sound, not replaced it. And how is what I do any different from that, Miranda? How are your artistic choices automatically more valid than mine? Because I'm not trying to be everything. To everyone, I know who I am and what I represent. Kelly's patience finally snapped completely. And what exactly do you represent, Miranda? Gatekeeping? Exclusivity? The idea that country music belongs to certain people and not others. Because if that's what you represent, then maybe we have a fundamental disagreement about what this genre should be. Miranda's eyes blazed as she processed Kelly's words. A fundamental disagreement. Kelly, country music has traditions. It has roots. It has meaning that goes deeper than chart positions and crossover appeal. If you can't understand that, then maybe you don't understand country music at all. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Kelly's face went completely pale, then flushed red. When she spoke, her voice was trembling with barely controlled anger. I don't understand country music, Miranda. I've lived country music. I grew up in a small town in Texas. I know what it's like to struggle, to dream, to lose everything, and find a way to keep going. I don't just sing these songs, I've lived them. So don't you dare tell me I don't understand country music just because I didn't grow up on a ranch or because I didn't start my career in Nashville. That's not what I meant, and you know it. No, that's exactly what you meant. You meant that somehow, because my path was different from yours, because I found success in pop first, that makes my country music less real, less valid, less authentic. Well, let me tell you something, Miranda. Authenticity isn't about following some predetermined path that you and a handful of other artists decided was the right one. Authenticity is about truth, and my truth includes all kinds of music. Miranda stood up abruptly from her chair, her body language screaming frustration and anger. This is ridiculous. I came here to talk about my album, not to be lectured about authenticity by someone who changes genres like she changes clothes. Kelly shot up from her own chair, matching Miranda's energy. Changes genres like I change clothes? Are you kidding me right now? Miranda, you just spent the last 10 minutes questioning my integrity as an artist and as a person. And now you're mad because I'm defending myself. I'm mad because you're twisting everything I say to make yourself look like a victim. A victim. I'm not playing victim, Miranda. I'm calling you out for being a bully, because that's what this is. You're using your platform and your reputation to belittle artists who don't fit into your narrow definition of what country music should be. Miranda's face was scarlet now, her hands clenched at her sides. A bully? Kelly, you invited me on your show and then ambushed me with this whole confrontation. If anyone's being a bully here, it's you. Ambushed you. I asked you one question about comments you made publicly, and you turned it into a personal attack on my artistry and my character. You could have given a diplomatic answer and moved on, but instead, you chose to double down and insult me on my own show. I didn't insult you. I told you the truth. Your version of the truth, your opinion dressed up as fact. Miranda, just because you believe something doesn't make it universal truth. Miranda laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is unbelievable. You know what, Kelly? This whole conversation proves exactly what I was talking about. Artists today are so sensitive, so unwilling to hear any criticism or different perspective, that they turn everything into a personal attack. Criticism? Kelly's voice cracked slightly. Miranda, you didn't offer constructive criticism? You questioned my authenticity, called my music calculated, and implied that I'm some kind of fake country artist chasing trends. That's not criticism, that's character assassination. If you can't handle having your artistic choices questioned, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. I can handle having my choices questioned, Miranda. What I can't handle is having my integrity questioned by someone who doesn't know me, doesn't know my heart, and apparently doesn't respect me enough to give me the benefit of the doubt. Miranda shook her head, her voice dripping with condescension. Kelly, this isn't personal. This is about music and standards, and maintaining some level of artistic integrity in an industry that's losing its way, not personal. Miranda, you made it personal the moment you started questioning whether my connection to country music was genuine. You made it personal when you suggested I was calculating my way through different genres for commercial success. You don't get to attack someone's character and then claim it's not personal. The two women were facing each other now, both standing, both visibly shaking with anger. The audience was completely transfixed, many with their phones out, despite the show's no recording policy. The cameramen continued rolling, unsure whether they should stop or keep capturing this unprecedented moment. You know what? Miranda said, her voice suddenly cold and controlled. I don't need to stand here and be lectured by someone who clearly doesn't understand what I was trying to say. I don't need to justify my opinions to you or anyone else. Then don't, Kelly shot back. But don't expect to come on my show, insult me and my work, and then walk away without being challenged on it. Challenged, Miranda let out another harsh laugh. Kelly, you didn't challenge me. You attacked me. You turned what should have been a simple interview into some kind of tribunal where I'm supposed to apologize for having standards. That's what you call it. I call it prejudice. I call it elitism. I call it exactly the kind of attitude that makes young artists afraid to take risks or explore their creativity, because they're worried about being judged by people like you. Miranda started moving toward the edge of the interview area, her publicist rising from her seat with obvious alarm. People like me, Kelly, people like me are the reason country music still exists. People like me fight to preserve something meaningful instead of letting it get watered down into whatever sells the most records. People like you, Kelly said, following her movement but staying in the interview area, are the reason the industry is so divided. People like you are the reason we can't celebrate each other's successes without tearing each other down. People like you are what's wrong with country music, not what's right with it. Miranda stopped in her tracks and whirled around. What's wrong with country music? Kelly, I am country music. I've given my entire life to this genre. I've bled for it, I've sacrificed for it, and I've never compromised who I am for commercial success. So don't you dare tell me I'm what's wrong. With anything. Then prove it, Kelly said, her voice steady now despite her obvious emotion. Prove that country music is big enough for all of us. Prove that you care more about the music than about being right. Prove that you're secure enough in your own success that you don't need to tear down other artists to validate yourself. Miranda stared at her for a long moment, and for just a second, it seemed like she might sit back down, like she might find a way to de-escalate the situation. But then her jaw set, her eyes hardened, and she shook her head slowly. I don't have to prove anything to you, Kelly, and I certainly don't have to sit here and be disrespected on your show while you grandstand for your audience. Miranda? Wait, Kelly said, but Miranda was already walking away, her publicist scrambling to gather their things and follow. Thank you for having me, Miranda said over her shoulder, her voice dripping with sarcasm. This has been very enlightening. Kelly stood there for a moment, watching Miranda Lambert walk off her set while the cameras continued rolling. The audience was completely silent, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Kelly looked directly into the camera, her composure finally returning as she processed what had just happened. Well, she said quietly, that's not how I expected this interview to go. The weight of the moment settled over the entire studio as Miranda disappeared behind the curtain, leaving Kelly alone on the stage with a studio full of shocked audience members and a story that would dominate entertainment headlines for weeks to come. What did you think of this explosive confrontation between these two country music powerhouses? Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments, do you think Miranda was justified in walking out, or should she have stayed to finish the conversation?